Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time around I got 10 movies for you, which are all not mainstream, but they're a little bit different. They're a little off to one side. They're a little bit strange. They're cultish, they're odd, and they're fantastic. So I picked them specifically because I was looking for things that aren't mainstream movies. I was looking for things that aren't Deadpool and Wolverine. I was looking for things that are able to be found, but are a little bit off everybody's radar. So we'll get started with number one. As some of you may know, I love genre. Chinese hopping vampires, undead ghosts, zombies, whatever you want to call them. They kick ass. And I like them. And I like the way that they've been incorporated mostly into comedies made in Hong Kong originally. There was an American one called The Jitters. But for the most part, they were made in Hong Kong in the 1980s with a series called Mr. Vampire. This is from Eureka, and it's a great movie. It combines wuxia, Chinese martial arts, Chinese magic from the distant past, horror, comedy, sexy female ghost. It's got everything you could possibly need in an exploitation movie. It's directed by Ricky Lau, and it's really good. It's from 1985, made in Hong Kong. It's about a bunch of guys who are working for a priest who is housing a bunch of hopping vampires who are being taken from one place to another so that they can be safely buried. Unfortunately, the prayers that are attached to their forehead come loose and all hell breaks loose. There's also a city official who's a really nasty piece of shit, and all sorts of comedy things happen. Beautiful martial arts action, beautiful martial arts comedy action happens in this one. And it's a real killer fun movie. There is a reversible artwork on this one, so you've got that as an option. I've had 3 copies of Mr. Vampire over the years. Originally I had a VHS, then I had a DVD, and then about a year ago I upgraded to this one. And unfortunately, when I was upgrading, I had a problem. I had to get the 4 sequels as well. So there they are in another Eureka box set. Mr. Vampire 2, Mr. Vampire 3, Mr. Vampire Saga 4, and Vampire vs. Vampire. They will come from 1986 to 1989. And a cartoonish caricature piece of artwork there. You can really go down a rabbit hole of Chinese vampire movies if you're not careful, and I'm really careful on these things. There's some more of the artwork there, and you get a book. There's a priest, not somebody you want to take lightly. And these movies are just fantastic fun. The soundtracks are all great. They incorporate Chinese traditional music into the soundtracks along with much more modern themes. The martial arts action is just fantastic. It's totally on point. There's a lot of wire work. There's a lot of those things where somebody kicks somebody and dust comes off them as they kick them. All the great stuff you want to have in a Chinese martial arts movie. You have rice as a way of blocking the path of vampire. You have the prayers hanging down on their faces. You have all of that good stuff. And these movies are immensely entertaining. The comedy travels well. There are a few culturally specific jokes, but the subtitles often communicate them quite effectively. I just love these, and every now and then, when I'm in the mood for something a bit lighter, I'll dip into a Zhangxia movie and just have a great time with them. While we're on the non-Caucasian side of the planet, this is a Japanese movie series. I've got 7 discs of it. It's about a character called Ogami Ito, a master swordsman and the shogun's royal executioner. He gets falsely accused of wrongdoings, and his wife is killed, his house gets burnt down, and he's on the run with his baby son Dagoro. Basically he becomes a ronin, a sword for hire. And of course it is Wolf and Cub, based on the original manga. This series of movies is fantastic. It includes all 6 movies, this one, as well as the recut English dub version Shogun Assassin of the first movie. The movies are Sword of Vengeance, which was the original name of the first film, Baby Cart at the River Styx, which is a great name, Baby Cart to Hades, Baby Cart in Peril, Baby Cart in the Land of the Demons, and White Heaven in Hell. The hero pushes his kid around in a big baby cart, which also has all their gear in it, which also has samurai swords that come out of the side of it. It's over-the-top, crazy action, and it's very much a jidaigeki movie. And it's a lot of fun, and these are all in beautiful aspect ratios. The transfers are really great. And because this is an edition that really hasn't been around much, I checked out the price of it on eBay and other places, because I've been finding this weird thing lately that a whole bunch of these things, which I picked up at a reasonable price a decade ago. They're selling for $150 and $200 Australian in the resale market. So there's a whole bunch of these kinds of things that I've got in the collection. And I'm looking at them going, if I got rid of all of these ones, I could probably afford a holiday. They are selling for crazy amounts of money because people want them. People want the physical media. And there's starting to be that thing where older physical media releases that haven't been upgraded are becoming crazily valuable. I don't know whether they're going to actually sell at those prices or whether they're just being offered at those prices. But I know that there is a market for them, and I know that people want them. And these things are going for nuts money. I'm not selling them. I'm just saying I was looking at them and thinking that. But I'm not selling them. I appreciate them. I'm going to watch them repeatedly. And these kind of movies are popcorn comfort food for me. There's often quite gory scenes in these, but that's part of the charm of them. So Lone Wolf and Cub, if you can find a copy of that at a reasonable price, you're ahead of the game. This is an Australian movie that I've known about since it came out in 1974. In fact, there was a 1-hour TV special on Channel 9 about the making of this film as a part of the promotion for the film. Of course, it's been released on Blu-ray by Umbrella because Umbrella does fantastic amounts of Australian exploitation films. It's the best and one of the few Australian biker movies, Stone. Now, I've had previous versions of this. I had the original version that came out on DVD. I think I may have even had the VHS back in the day. But Stone is fantastic. Written and directed by Sandy Harbert, a guy who worked in advertising for years to get the money together to make this movie as a passion project. He quit the advertising industry, grew his hair long, grew his beard, and starred in the movie. It's got a fantastic supporting cast. Hugh Keys-Burns in there, Rebecca Gilling, the wonderful and still around Roger Ward. Stone is a totally you must see and have this movie. And they also gave us the Japanese poster for it. It's set in and around Sydney about a biker gang who get infiltrated by a cop who's trying to find out why certain assassins are trying to kill off the biker gang. It's a beautifully shot movie. It has a ton of Sydney locations that I know very well. And the lovely thing about this Umbrella release of it is, not only do you get the movie on Blu-ray, fantastic, you get Billy Green's original soundtrack on CD as well. Now, I don't think this is still in stock with Umbrella, but you may be able to find it secondhand. It's a really great release. There are a shit ton of extras on it, but for me, this is the cinema of my culture. I grew up in Sydney, lived half my life in Sydney before I moved to Melbourne, and this is the stuff that I loved as a kid when I saw it, and I love even more now because I've got more perspective on how historically important movies like this are. Really entertaining, really fantastic. I love this movie. Let's go to Scandinavia and why the hell not. I saw this movie in the cinema when it first came out. It was an R-rated movie here in Australia. It was known as They Call Her One Eye, but the real name is Thriller, A Cruel Picture. It's about a woman played by Christina Lindberg who lived in the country. She's been mute since her childhood because of a trauma. And she travels to the city and is ringed into sex work and drug addiction and things like that. And as a part of that, she does something wrong and her pimp pulls out one of her eyes. And she goes on a revenge thing with a shotgun and an attitude. Really full-on heavy movie. But it's in some ways ultimate 1970s exploitation. Now this is the uncut, uncensored version of it, which is quite brutal. I'll be honest with you, if it's not for everybody, and if you are tender to those kind of things, you're not going to want to see it. But I saw this at an impressionable age, and it stunned me at the time I saw it, but it kind of led me into a lot of other exploitation films that I later saw. There are a ton of special features on this. This is the Synapse Films version of it, and it's a rock solid piece of 1970s exploitation. Like I said, not for everybody, but if you're into 1970s exploitation, particularly weird European exploitation films, Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and also known as They Call Her One Eye. Yeah, this one, it's not quite the French New Extreme kind of horror movie, but but it does have, for the 1970s, some really full-on scenes. I like it not because of those scenes. I like it because I like 1970s exploitation films. You might want to check that out, but only if you are maybe not desensitized, but able to view this kind of film. While on the subject of tough chicks, this was by Jack Hill, who also did Foxy Brown Coffee, Spider Baby. I found a really bad copy of this on VHS back in the day. It was a bootleg, and I watched it and it was barely watchable. But now I've got the Blu-ray from Arrow Video of Switchblade Sisters. This is really full on. It's about an inner city girl gang who get a new girl come into the gang, and there are conflicts in there. They go up against another female gang. It's just full on 1970s exploitation. There's some of the art from it. There's a booklet, which I always like getting, which I've got to be careful with in case there are some dodgy bits. But there's also an essay in here by Alexandra Helen Nicholas. This is, again, the kind of movie that I watched when I was a teenager. I'd finished work at a factory when I was 15, 16, and then I'd rush into the city, about 20-kilometre train ride, and watch these movies, or watch them on my day off, watch them over the weekend, watch them when I was between factory jobs when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. Switchblade Sisters, high recommend from me. It's a grindhouse movie. As a grindhouse movie I love because I love grindhouse cinema. Many of these movies aren't what you would call, I'm not going to say PC because only old farts say PC, but they're movies that aren't as sensitive to modern sensibilities as a lot of other films. But this one's definitely female positive. And Jack Hill always had strong female characters in his movies. And this is no exception to that. You should check out Switchblade Sisters. Then we're moving over to a late 1950s small-budget American crime movie about a guy who hates women. Stars Vince Edwards, Philip Pine and Herschel Bernardi, directed by Irving Lerner. Small-budget Los Angeles-based crime film about a sociopathic killer for hire, murdered by contract. This is Vince Edwards before he became Ben Casey. And it's got a really minimalist score to it, which is fantastic. Basically, this guy insinuates himself into organised crime. He's very much an outsider, but he's very good at killing people, so he does contracts for them. And then they give him a contract on a woman who's going to be turning evidence in a Senate committee, and he doesn't want to kill women because women are bad luck. Women are bad news. Women he doesn't want to have anything to do with. And he is contracted with the assistance of Philip Pine's character and Herschel Bernardi, who are more made men than he is. He's a contractor to kill this woman, and she's under police protection. The house she's in is really well protected, and he's got to get in there and find a way to kill her, even though he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to kill a woman, because he doesn't trust women. Now, this has got tons of extras on it, including an intro by Marty Scorsese. This one was missing for a lot of years and wasn't really well regarded. And then it got some critical acclaim and people started reevaluating it. It's a solid crime movie. And again, it's kind of pared back, low budget, minimal score, good solid direction, black and white cinematography, and probably Vince Edwards' best role. After he did Ben Casey, he just took any role he could get because he had a gambling addiction. But Murder by Contract, you want to see this one, you want to have this one. And I'm really glad Indicator put this out there. I got it on a deal like 3 for 20 quid. And I liked it as soon as I saw it. Another Indicator one I've got, Nicholas Winding Refn presents Dennis Hopper in Night Tide. Directed by Curtis Harrington. It's from about 1961. And it's a weird little story about a sailor who meets a woman who works at a sideshow carnival on a pier, who may or may not be a mermaid. And he gets involved with her. There's a murder. There's some criminal stuff. There are some very freaky people working on the pier with her. And it's a movie that's really got an interesting mood about it. And it's hard to describe, but it's a very early Dennis Hopper role after he lost his contract with the Hollywood studios for being Dennis Hopper. He went independent and started making small movies like this. It's not over the top Blue Velvet Dennis Hopper. It's Dennis Hopper in a much more subtle role as a not too intelligent sailor who gets involved with this woman played by Linda Lawson, who works at a sideshow as a mermaid and may actually be a real mermaid. Very strange film. but really memorable. And it shows what you could do in those days on a small budget with a small crew, but with a script that's quite unlike anything that Hollywood was doing at the time. You should check that one out. We're down to the last three now, and they're all bangers. This one's not a long film, but jeez, it's good. It's one of the great films noir, directed by Abraham Polonsky, starring John Garfield and Thomas Gomez. It's a fantastic crime film called Force of Evil. Again, this one's got an intro by Martin Scorsese. It's a story of a corrupt lawyer, played by John Garfield, who is helping organised crime incorporate all of the numbers rackets in New York City into one operation. All the small numbers running guys who run small neighbourhood numbers games. They're all going to be incorporated into organised crime and into a much larger organisation. Only problem is, the lawyer's brother, played by Thomas Gomez, runs a neighbourhood numbers racket and doesn't want to play ball with the big boys. And this lawyer is tasked with getting his brother to do that. His brother doesn't want to. His brother wants to stay independent. He runs it for the neighbourhood. It helps people out when they win. He makes a few bucks on the side. He wants to keep it local and with a connection to the people. Things go downhill, and there's a metaphor of the character played by John Garfield running down staircases as his world becomes more corrupt and darker and nastier as the story progresses. It's a fantastic film about people losing themselves and the moral compromises you make when you play ball with big gangsters. You had some alternative cover art there, but Force of Evil's incredibly memorable. And for the John Garfield character, it is, in every sense of his life, a descent into hell. Fantastic movie. It's a fantastic movie. If you're going to make a list of, say, the 10 best films noir, Force of Evil has to be there. It really does a lot with a little. It only runs 79 minutes, as in black and white, and it punches hard. I just have nothing but great things to say about this one. You should check that one out if you haven't. You're going to thank me for it. Then we go to something much lighter. 1970s was full of kung fu movies, and I love that. I was there for that 100%. Now, when you think kung fu leading men, you think Bruce Lee. You probably think Chuck Norris if you're a bit down market. You think Jim Kelly. You don't often think Joe Don Baker. But here's Joe Don Baker and Jim Kelly in Golden Needles, directed by Robert Klaus, who directed Enter the Dragon, amongst many other things, and the fantastic Rod Taylor movie Darker Than Amber. There's about a scheme to find some golden needles, which are actually acupuncture needles, which, if put into the human body in the right order by somebody who knows what they're doing, and confers immortality and vitality to people. So old guys obviously want it. There's a bad guy who wants the needles, played by Burgess Meredith in a very campy way. It's also got Elizabeth Ashley in it, playing the love interest. Elizabeth Ashley just after she divorced George Papard. And Anne Southern in an interesting role as well. I like this movie. I don't think it's fantastic, but I like the kung fu action in it. I like Joe Don Baker just barreling around and punching out and tackling people like a footballer. Really fun action film, a programmer from the 1970s. This is another one I had on VHS back in the day, but I wasn't able to find a DVD of it, and eventually I forked out the premium you have being Australian for the Kino Lorber edition of it. Really entertaining. Lalo Schifrin, who did the soundtrack for it, he also did the soundtrack for Enter the Dragon. It's just a lot of fun. Good, solid, post-Bruce Lee kung fu action film, directed by the same guy that directed Enter the Dragon. You might want to check that one out. There's Jim Kelly, rocking a stash. Last one I got for you is a feel-good movie made by a guy who made one of the most successful movies in Hollywood. Think back to 2008. Iron Man came out, made all the money in the world, directed by Jon Favreau. He then made Iron Man 2, which again made all the money in the world. And then he did a movie for himself. A lot of Hollywood did that as far back as you can remember. They'd make one movie or two movies for the money, and then they'd make one for themselves. Something that was a passion project, something that meant something to them. They didn't need it to make a lot of money because they'd cashed in on the first couple. And so Jon Favreau made a really good, feel-good, honest, fun movie Chef. Chef's about a guy who is a top-end chef in a very posh restaurant. He won't compromise himself for commercialism. The restaurant's owned by an asshole played by Dustin Hoffman, who wants him to put really ordinary shit on the menu because the customers will like this kind of food. And he doesn't compromise. He gets sacked. He ends up not being able to get a gig and decides to open a food truck making Cubano sandwiches because he likes that. And he's kind of rebuilding his life. He doesn't want to compromise, but he knows he can make a bloody good sandwich. So his ex-wife, played by Sofia Vergara, and his friend, played by John Leguizamo, put this truck together. They meet a whole bunch of people. There's Oliver Platt's in the movie. Scarlett Johansson's in there as well. Bobby Cannavale's in there as well. Robert Downey Jr. does a cameo, and there is a favourite of Favreau who he loves. And it's one of those feel-good movies. It's not a family film necessarily. There's a bit of swearing in it. But it's about following your passion. It's about making bloody good sandwiches. And you're going to want a sandwich after you watch this movie. Of course, it's well directed because Favreau made it himself, and he knows where a camera goes. I really like this one. It's just, I didn't put it into that video I did about movies that make me feel good, and I'm kind of regretting it now because this is a feel-good movie. Picked it up for absolutely nothing, which is why it's got a sticker in there. I have trouble getting off the case. But if you haven't seen Chef, you should see it. And I worked in a kitchen for 8 months back in the 80s in a restaurant. And so I've got some connection with that and Bourdain and other things like that. And it brings me back to those times to see this. I know the meticulous work and the repetitive meticulous work you've got to do to work in a kitchen. I just love this one. I think it's an honest film. And it's honest about people who won't compromise their morals for money. And that's a universal thing, but it's never going to go away. It's going to be with us forever because the urge to make money and the imperative of capitalism is going to be with us for a very long time. And this one is a cure for that. Follow your passion, do what you know you can do well, and do it on your own terms. I love this film. And so should you. So that's it. 10 movies, more if you count the hopping vampire ones. But good, solid movies, all of them entertaining. Some of them hard to watch. Some of them very, very easy and comforting to watch. But they're all movies I'm passionate about, all movies that I like a lot, and I'm going to post links to where you can find them if you possibly can. I may have some Amazon associate links for some of them, so if you're looking to buy a physical media copy of any of these, I'll post the links. Amazon gives me a little bit of a kickback, and then I'll buy more movies with that. So that's it for this time around. We've got Science Fiction Saturday coming up this weekend, and hopefully it'll do fantastically well. But just to end things off, I took a look at the upcoming Marvel movies, and being a superhero fan, while we're on the subject of Robert Downey Jr., I'm big in favour of Robert Downey Jr. playing Victor Von Doom in the Avengers movies in the future. There's an Avengers Doomsday coming up where Robert Downey Jr., not playing Iron Man, is going to play Victor Von Doom, the King of Latveria, the main villain of the Fantastic Four, and I'm there for that. I think that he's such a versatile actor and such a powerful actor. He can play anything. And even though he did play Tony Stark, he's going to be good in this role. And why wouldn't you do it if you were Robert Downey Jr.? You've already made somewhere around $600 million from the MCU. And they're offering you a different role, not playing same character, but playing something new that you can make your own the same way you did Iron Man. Why wouldn't you do that? It's going to be directed by the Russo brothers. I'm there for that. I have never suffered superhero burnout, and I probably never will. I just wanted to put that in because I'm really jazzed about that. So that's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Tell me what you think of these 10 movies and whether you think that Robert Downey Jr. is going to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member or by becoming a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Lots of things upcoming. Got some great plans. I've got some really interesting stuff coming from Umbrella Entertainment and Imprint as well. So the future is so bright, I'm going to need a welding mask. So until next time, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies. Watch Chef. You're going to love it. And I'll catch you next time.